we use these windows as examples. I really do think that this is when windows were at their peak in terms of like being really well made and easy to maintain. Like I said, these windows were free, and so I really don't want the sashes, even though they're perfectly fine. I'd love to salvage the glass. Sometimes, and if you're in a hardcore restoration situation where you want to retain as much historic fabric as you can, and we really don't want to throw away anything that's good anyway. If you want to take the window sash apart and just rebuild the bad piece, you can do that. You can take these windows apart and if just the bottom rail is sagging, you can replace that bottom rail. It's a lot of work. It's really fussy, but it can be done. The thing that I've recently discovered about, because I've tried to salvage wavy glass before, and I would sit there and just try to chisel that stuff out, and I would just spend a long time doing that, and then right at the end. But you know, you get what you can get. Now you have two smaller pieces instead of one big piece, and it just ends up being a lot of time, and that's just the way it goes. It's sad, but it's the way it goes. I just recently came to the realization that you have all these window sashes with this wavy glass in there. Why can't, and you don't care about the sash, but why can't you just trash the sash to get the glass out? So, and these windows from the 20s, I started noticing you've got these dimples that are consistent. So, there we go.
So you're just chewing into the wood there?
Just chewing in the wood, exploring where that dimple was, knowing that it was right there, right? And what that is, it's, these things had great mortise and tenons with their construction, and they were nailed together at their corners. So basically, the way they made these windows was, it was a factory, and they could crank out a bunch of these pieces, and they could cut, and they had profile cutters that could cut your inside profiles and cut your mortises, and they had pieces that could cut with their tenons and everything. And that really cool median rail profile, that was built into the cutters. They would make this out of one piece of wood. These days, there aren't those factories that can do that. So if you want to restore an old window, how do you do that? I'll show you what I do and what I have done. But in terms of taking these things apart, if you have a window like this, you find that nail, and you put it on your bench, and you pound that thing through. The glue holding this joint together is 100 years old. It's pretty dry. You get that nail out of there, you just pop this thing apart. What I hoped we'd have more time for, but I don't think we're going to get there, but you get the idea, is I just found that little nail. We could drive that through, just pull it out with nail pliers outside the other end. I bet we can find a couple in there too. Yep, there's one right there. Now, so the basic idea is drive those things through, and then carve away a little bit of the window putty, so you got a flat edge. Take a piece of wood, and just gently tap evenly to where it comes off evenly, and it'll separate itself from the glass. And then you take those pins out, and you can just pull this whole thing apart without trashing the glass. And your chances of saving the glass are much, much greater.
If you strip the paint off, would those pins be exposed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the situation that you run into the most is the bottom rail if it's sagging. And if you want to save the window and you want to make one of these, befriend a woodworker. This isn't impossible. These are simple mortise and tenons. And what I do, if I'm making a new window, because we don't have a factory where we have those huge cutters that can cut this profile, I'll very carefully mill these things on the table saw And it's just a matter of figuring it all out. And just knowing, and if you're working off of old window sashes anyway, you can create these pieces. The whole idea is that those pieces together are the thickness of your parting bead, which makes sense because you have your two windows coming together. You want to just create that edge. So what I do, because I'm cheating, I'm making it out of two pieces of wood instead of one, I will make this piece, and I'll use epoxy adhesive or Type Bond 3, depending on what you have, but I'll get the glues in a second. But I'll just glue that on there and nail it. And because this isn't a structural part, it's going to be fine. And it's also going to last. Your pressure is always going to keep it together. You're less likely to come apart. And if it did, put a couple nails in it. It's fine. So if I was going to make this piece, that's how I would make it. I could cut a rabbet and cut the mortise and tenons, and I would glue this piece on. And then you can put this back on the old sash. It's fussy. I make it sound easy, but it's hours of work. But you could do it. You could do it if you want to save that sash. Oftentimes, and even with the state, I don't want to throw away anything away historic. So it'd be faster and easier for me to make a new sash. Even if I could fix the old sash, I'll archive the sash so somebody else can make the determination, because say you have a contractor starting who's going to be repainting all these things, and the contractor has to do all the lead abatement, and the contractor hires pretty inexperienced people to do this lead abatement, and they can really, really butcher some historic windows just by doing the lead abatement. So those are situations where I'll go, that window's in really bad shape. I'll set it aside, I'll label it, I'll make a new one, and even though the new one's a new one, later on somebody can determine if they can safely do the lead abatement stripping on that window, put it back. But in the meantime, I put a new window sash in there, it's fine. It doesn't look any different except it's new. There are a couple things that I do differently when I'm making a new window sash, because I don't have the factory with those fancy cutters. What I did with these windows is I did floating mortise and tenons. Can't pull this thing out because it's too tight. But I basically, I have a window sash profile cutter set that I can run on my router table. And then I'll just hand cut the mortises, and I'll cut tenons and cut a mortise in my other piece. And I like to use, at that point, let's talk real quick about adhesives. I basically only have two. Type Bond 3 is, I think it's their ultimate wood glue. That'd be extreme or something. You know, it seems what the marketing is. Type Bond 1, it's great. Type Bond 2, it's better than 1. Type Bond 3, it's better than all of them. Why even buy one or two if you're only going to save a couple of bucks? Interior, exterior, I just use 3 on pretty much everything, and it works pretty well. I've recently started using epoxy adhesive, which is a game changer for me. It's harder to use, it's more fuzzy, but you get better results. It's a 2-part epoxy, and you put the tip on it, and it mixes it as it goes through the tube, and it is just a fantastic bond. Price according. I think like a tube is like $30, but it's.
Is it fast cure?
Oh no.
It's a slow cure.
It takes a full day, but you know, for the most part,
Just like-
any decent adhesive, I'll clamp it and just come back the next day. Don't try to do anything the same day. It just doesn't make sense. But I would, you know, if you have a floating mortise and tenon like that, I would really on a window, I would try to use epoxy if you can. Type Bond would work, but I think it would start to separate.
You know, they build furniture and stuff, so you don't get into a cross-grain gluing situation with your complex joinery. Sometimes they don't use any glue or anything. Is that, have you ever,
Well, if you think about
like
this,
outside? exteriors, I don't know if it's.
Traditionally, windows were made to where they didn't use glue at all. And it was all just like really, really tight mortise and tenon fits, and it was great. And you can still build them that way. It takes a long time.
Because of the tolerance.
Because of the tolerances, because of the fussy machinery. Like, it's all done by hand, and it's all like,
Yeah.
it can be done. In certain restoration situations, I think that would be appropriate. But if you live in a 100-year-old house, I think if you do something using new products, it works really well. And because you're not trying to recreate entirely an old thing, you just want the illusion of and function of an old thing, you can use new technology to your advantage.
A question, you recommend oil-based primer? Often when I'm speaking with painters about a job, they wean me off that very fast and say there's some legal restriction to oil-based now. What do I do when that happens?
Glad you asked. And like I said, on that stuff, you have to use oil-based primer. You have to. This stuff, they still have in Sherwin-Williams, only in corks, I believe. It's a high build, quality oil-based primer. I think all the other decent paint companies in town don't even carry oil-based anymore. I'm not sure about that. If they do, ask them if it's high build. Ask them. I tend to like the stuff that dries really slow and it's a high build. So I like this stuff a lot. I think it works really well. Many times over, you can't get that, or you can't wait for 2 days for it to dry, or you just don't need the high build characteristics. Like, let's say you're just like replacing a little bit of window glazing on your window, and you don't need to repaint the entire window. You could just come back after a couple weeks and use something like this and seal it up with the oil, and it'd be fine. This is something that you can get at a lot of places. They still make it, and it's an oil-based primer.
What is it? What is it?
Sensor cover stain.
And what was the other?
It's Sherwin-Williams exterior oil-based wood primer.
What is high build?
High build means that when you put it on, regardless of how thick it is when it goes on, as it dries, you'll end up with a higher build if it's high build. Some stuff like this dries quick, it goes on thin, it dries thin. So you don't have your layer isn't this thick. With this stuff, it takes a lot longer to dry, but when it's done, it's got a much thicker film to it. And it's you can sand it, and you still have primer there, and it's a better surface to work off of.
You may have talked, I don't know if you're going to talk about this at all, but you're going to talk about stripping paint off the sashes, and when we should do that, when we shouldn't.
Yeah, I'll get into that now, because we're kind of like, talking about, I just want to finish up with like if you're building new sashes. This joint is kind of fussy. It works. This joint, great. It's not a biscuit joiner. Biscuit joiners are pretty similar, where you have a machine like this, and it does these little, they're really thin little biscuit-shaped things, and they help line things up, but the joint's not going to last. This German company, Festool, came up with this system where it basically cuts a mortise. And you can cut a mortise in each end, just like you would a biscuit joiner. And then you can buy exterior grade mahogany tenons. And everything just fits perfectly. So, and it's super fast to use. $1,500. So, it's a great tool, and you can use it for so many different things. It's a lot faster than doing it this way. And it's a much stronger joint. You take a joint like that with epoxy, and you can make it look old, but it's going to be strong as can be. This is like using modern technology to your advantage. And it might be expensive, but it's going to save a lot of time if you have a lot of stuff to do. Doors, windows, it works wonders.
I mean, that's just basically a fancy dowel, right? I mean, if you didn't want to spend $600, could you just use the $10 doweling jig and do a dowel joint?
Yes, of course you can. The problem is that the windows I replaced in building in Old Sacramento, they built those in the 80s, 70s, 80s when it was all reconstruction happened. And I think the contractor made decent money because they weren't built really well. The quality of wood wasn't really good, and they doweled everything together. So when I'm taking the old windows out, they were literally falling apart. The first thing that's gonna rot is the cheapest wood, which is that super cheap pine dowel.
Oh, so you need a mahogany dowel.
So even if you have really nice, old growth Doug fir, and you have this cheap pine dowel, if water gets in that joint at all at any point, if your adhesive isn't good and it opens up, water's gonna rot out those dowels. You have no joint, you have no strength. So that's the benefit to that. So old sashes. Knowing what we know now, if you have an old sash and you know that your joints, regardless of the nails, it's gonna be all loose and wobbly, or what happens more often than not, you get rot down in here, up in here, and you get rot like some edge of the window sash, or like along in here, you tend to see rot there. You get some severe checking on your meeting rail. But it's not bad enough to make a new window sash. So what I recommend is epoxy in it. Avatron makes this product, I don't know if you're familiar with it. They have a 2-part liquid, and they have the 2-part solid stuff. And this is the solid stuff. It basically, it's the consistency of Play-Doh. The liquid stuff, if you have like rot on the window frame or the window sash, you can take and equal parts, part A, part B, mix it together, let it sit 5 minutes, and then just brush that stuff on and let it soak into the wood as much as it can. So if you have any soft, punky, like rotted wood, just let that soak in as much as it's going to soak in, because the way it works is the liquid will soak in anything that's rotted and anything that's soft. It's going to like go in and stop absorbing once it hits like good wood. And it's going to stop any rot, which is really great. So you don't want it to puddle or pool, but let it dry, come back the next day, and do the 2-part putty on top of that, and it becomes a solid bond that's bonded with the wood. And this stuff isn't going to rot, it's great. The trick is, and I run into this a lot, is it's easy to use, and you can drill this stuff, you can sculpt it, you can sand it, you can chisel it, you can do anything you want to do with it. So everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. And on the old houses, everybody really loves it. So they'll end up replacing more stuff with epoxy than they should do, where they should just replace the crap in with wood. That is your decision. You can do whatever you want to do, but there are 2 things that I would advise against. If you can replace it with wood, stick with traditional materials. And the other thing is, when you're using a liquid, it is crucial, it is so important for you to get as much liquid on there as you can. I'm finding situations now where things are falling apart, and then you start peeling away the layers of paint, and you find these big chunks of epoxy, and it's popping off the wood, and the wood is all rotten behind it, because they didn't arrest the rot. And so now you're seeing this like big chunky thing, this repair, that like is even further decayed behind it. You don't even know what's happening until you start peeling stuff away, because it looks pretty good from the surface. Yes?
Would using that as a temporary measure be destructive in the end, or would that be an appropriate use? If you've got a big bunch of rot, but you can't get the permanent fix made, would that make the problem worse, or would it effectively maintain it for a little while?
If you are careful with the liquid stuff, it can be a permanent fix. And the truth is, we really don't know how long it's gonna last. I'm dealing with a lot of like
It's almost the whole
corner of window, or
yeah, on the outside you can see the whole horrific story. I can't believe the window's even still there.
well, on my house, everything's not finished. And I've been staring at this rotted window sash for 15 years, and it's about that big, it's a whole corner. And I can make a window sash in no time. I can also just epoxy that.
You're still thinking about it.
Well, I'm just too lazy or something. I haven't done it yet. But I could go either way. That's a situation where I would go either way, and I would be fine with it. If you correctly epoxy it, it would be fine. And that way you're saving more original stuff. But I can also make new window sash.
Yeah,
Would it be better,
I would epoxy it, but just be really careful with the liquid.
would it be better just to rake out all that soft rot?
You want to get rid of like the super soft stuff as much as you can, but you're not going to get it all. And that's where you really want to make sure that liquid stuff penetrates and kills all the stuff that you can't scrape away. And that's where I think a lot of people fall short.
Is that why those are part A and part B, because one is,
Yeah, epoxy tends to work off of a chemical reaction. So you have a part A and part B liquid, and then you have part A and part B the solid stuff. And this stuff, you can make a little ball with equal parts A and B, and you have 15 minutes working time, I think it is. And then after you work it, it hardens up, and it's just like, it's a solid, actually, at the class, somebody thought it would be fun to try to like see how much pressure like that ball can take to dry the previous day. They put it in a vise, and it took a lot of pressure to get that stuff to crack. So the company, of course, they're trying to sell the product. They're going to tell you that it has the same amount of structural integrity as wood does, and it can span the same and all that kind of stuff. I don't need to not believe that, but I just have a hard time believing that. And I'm also a stickler that like sticking with like materials and replacing as much as you can with like stuff you can. But if you have rot, that's a great way to go.
you don't have anything here where you've done that? You a window where you've done that treatment that would epoxy?
No.
No.
One thing I'm going to say too about prepping these for paint, because we're at that point where you've got everything like epoxied where you need to, and you've got your glazing done, and it's all set up. But before you even, when the glass is out and you're just trying to prep this, you've got that all that lead paint. Sand it down. And a good oil-based primer is going to seal all that stuff in, and it's what they call encapsulating the lead. So once you paint it really good with a non-lead material, it's going to be great. The oil-based paint is going to like give you better bonding. So regardless of what the surface is underneath, and oftentimes in all buildings, those first few layers of paint are going to be oil. So or going to be lead. So you're going to be like getting the best bonding surface with your oil-based primer and encapsulating that lead for a longer period of time. You want to be really careful when you're sanding this stuff, because that is you want to get that to be perfectly smooth. And oftentimes your window sashes look like this, and they're just in terrible shape. And the really cheap latex paint won't be, it'll be really bubbly and really gummy. The same company that makes the Domino makes a sander, a series of sanders, where you have really excellent dust collection, like the best I've ever seen. You don't even need a dust mask, even though I recommend it. And I think they even improved the system to where it actually collects more dust than it used to. I've got the older version, which is, I can't imagine how they improved on it. It's that good, priced accordingly. And German, they're making the best tools. But I don't make a ton of money. I still bought one for my house, because after wearing out sanders and the vibration and the noise and getting those little swirling marks on these windows, after putting all this work into it, it's not worth it. You get a nice Festool sander, and you can keep it nice and smooth, and you can get rid of all that wonkiness, and you get better results. And it works great with the epoxy, and then you get everything nice and smooth, and you get good results.
What about using like a handheld planer with a real small, I mean, you can go down quite a bit to take a really small amount. You wouldn't do it?
You're asking for trouble.
Okay.
You're asking for bad things to happen that you can't reverse.
Can you put latex paint over the oil-based primer, or you need to stick with the oil-based paint over the primer?
Well, here's where things are going. Paint quality is improved a lot. I don't think primer quality has improved as much as the paint quality has. Oil-based primer is still superior, and I like oil-based primer on bare wood or encapsulating old oil-based, lead-based paint. That said, and what, on my windows, on my house, and on a lot of windows with the that I've done for state parks, I'll do the oil-based primer, and I'll do the oil-based paint. You can still get the super high-quality oil-based paint from Sherman's. I don't know why they can still sell it. You can only get it, of course.
Of course.
I actually asked them last time I was in there, I was like, who even buys this stuff? They're like, you. I don't know if it's because I'm not that old guy, that like, you gotta use oil-based paint. But the stuff works, and it's a great system that has a proven track record. That said, I think some of these new acrylics are really, really great products, and they're doing really nice things with them. And they bond really well to an oil-based primer. So I would have no problems recommending an oil-based primer with the newer urethane paints or the acrylic paints.
Isn't one of the point of the new paints that they don't yellow? And, whereas the old oil-based, final coat paints were yellow.
That's one of the arguing points, and it's true with a lot of varnishes and stuff these days.